Hi everyone, my name is Oyinka Braithwaite and this is Publishing an I. Today I have the fantabulous Claire Alexander here with me, and I'm gonna tell you a lot about her. Claire Alexander became a literary agent in 1998 after more than 20 years as a publisher, latterly as publisher of Viking and Hamish Hamilton and editor-in-chief of Macmillan. While at Viking, she was the editor of the winners of the Booker Prize, the Orange Prize, and the Whitbread Prize, the first editor ever to achieve this hat trick. In 2025, she was listed among the top 30 agents in the UK. In 2019, she was the agent of half of the shortlist of the Women's Prize, myself included, a prize of which she had been a founding member, although she stepped off the board in 2017. She was named Orion Publishing Group Literary Agent of the Year at the 2007 British Book Industry Awards, was awarded the 2008 Kim Scott Walwyn Prize, which honors outstanding achievements by women in publishing, and is a previous president of the Association of Authors Agents. She's currently chair of Aiken Alexander Associates, a major literary agency based in London. So all of that to say, Claire is brilliant at what she does, and it is such an honor to have her talk to us about being a literary agent and authors querying and all that good stuff. But I do want to stress that this is not pitching Claire Alexander as an agent. So Claire has a massive client list and is not really currently taking on clients at the minute, but there are agents in Aiken Alexander, which is again, it's a wonderful agency. I've been a part of this agency for 10 years, and there are other fantastic agents in that agency who are taking on clients. So if you are interested in becoming a client of Aiken Alexander, that is possible. But Claire is here as our mentor, as our guide, and just to talk us through what pitching to an agent takes. So let's jump. Oh, actually, before we jump right into it, I want to say a little bit about my relationship to Claire. Claire is my agent, and I'm feel really privileged to be able to say that. We've worked together. It's 9 years now. It's going to be 10 years. We should have like an anniversary party, Claire.
We should.
Next year. It's going to be 10 years very, very soon. And I can't believe how quickly the time has gone. But it's really been such a pleasure to be a client of Claire's. And I think when I became your client, I've told you this before, but I had no idea what an absolute legend you were. I had no idea who you were. I didn't even know you were Alexander of Aiken Alexander. That's how little research I had done, which is shameful. But I'm kind of glad I didn't know, because I think I would have been petrified. And despite the fact that you are this icon, just being in your company has always been easy. And I don't mean your company. I mean, being in your environment has just always been easy, always been fun. And what I haven't told you is the other day you, Leslie, and I were in a meeting together. And Leslie is she's my TV and film agent, for those who don't know. And we were in a meeting together with other people. And later on, I was by myself with one of the people we had been in a meeting with, and she mentioned how, she just felt that it was rare to see how much an agents cared for their client. And I think my journey with you and Leslie, it's really felt as though I'm surrounded by family.
That's
And
lovely.
I've always felt very cared for. Outside of, I mean, I know it's a professional relationship, but it's felt like a personal one as well.
Yeah,
And
and it is.
and
And it
I
is.
think it's, I mean, this is just, you're the only agent I've ever had, so I have nothing to compare it to. But I really think it's helped me just in my journey as a whole, as an author. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you
Thank
for
you.
that. Um, okay, moving on from the emotional stuff. I'm going to start asking you the questions. Um, as I said to you off camera, I'm getting the impression that a lot of the people who are watching my little videos are aspiring authors, and some know a little bit about the industry, some know nothing at all. So we're going to go all the way back to the basics. In your own words, what does an agent do?
Okay, so an agent is first and foremost your advocate in the publishing world. So, what an agent should do is be someone who's known within the publishing industry and who can translate that for you, so that they will represent you, they will put you in the right, ideally in the right hands with the right publishers globally. We're based in the UK,
Mm,
but we also operate in America in translation. We have a film and TV agent, Leslie, who you've already mentioned. And in each case, what a good agent does is try and position you and your work in the best possible context and with the best possible people. But back reeling a bit, obviously we can't do that for everybody.
mm,
So we're trusted within these industries for our taste. And consequently, we get, and you've mentioned it, we get an awful lot of submissions, out of which it's very subjective, but we select what we love. And you need to love it
mm,
because it's a lot of work. So you need to believe in that author's work. So the first thing we do is read what, and we'll come back to what you
yeah.
should send, but we read the work. And then if we like the work, we try and be alongside the writer all through a career and not just a book, but, to guide them so that they can have a career. Um, and be, as I say, with the best possible publishers. An agent also, just quickly as an aside, an agent collects your money.
Mm,
And so you also need to feel about an agent when you find one that they're honest, and businesslike, so that they can, handle your money in a proper way. They will take a commission. I'm sure we'll talk about that, but they will be collecting your money from all sorts of places and sending it out to you. So it needs to be a relationship of love and trust, I suppose.
okay, actually, two questions off the bat. Should you ever give an agent money up front?
No,
Okay.
absolutely not. Um, Agents should make money if they make you money. So they should only receive commission. And standardly, that commission is 15% in the UK and 20% in America and translation. And what that means is that if somebody, if they, and you probably need to also talk about what an advance and a royalty is, but the first thing that a publisher does if they want to publish your book is we negotiate the terms, an advance and royalties, and we take a small percentage of that to pay for our work, but we should not, and no agent should ask you for money up front. That is dishonorable. That isn't
Mm.
right.
Also, since there's a lot of money, how do you know that the agency is legit?
I think you should do a little bit of basic online research. And most agencies have a website. We do. We're in fact redesigning ours, or I'm not personally. It's going to be very beautiful. But you can look at their website, see who their authors are, for
Okay.
example, and that will give you a clue. One of the things I often say to people, which isn't quite that question, but when you're trying to think about who to approach, if you read books you love, look at the acknowledgements,
Mm,
and hopefully mostly the author says thank you to their agent. So
yeah.
that will also give you a bit of guidance. So between acknowledgements and looking a bit online, you can find out a lot.
Okay, going back a little bit, there was a question that I was asked. and someone asked, do agents like when you personalize the query letter, or do they prefer I'm seeking representation for dot 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 straight and to the point?
I think one of the things, when we talk about personalizing, what I'm seeing a lot of at the moment is personalizing that's AI assisted and it's rubbish. So I have seen a lot of things coming in to me that says, I see you're really interested in business books. I'm not interested in business books.
Mm,
So it depends what you mean by personalized. Some of those things actually are phony. Um, but it is worth maybe saying you're the agent of this in my case, Mark Haddon and Pat Barker.
mm,
They are two of my clients, Oyinkam Braithwaite. And I love their writing and you might like mine. That's the
mm,
sort of personalizing that makes some sense.
yeah.
But don't do a sort of AI inflected piece of nonsense.
What's a query letter pet peeve for you? Or is it the AI? Is it strictly AI? Is there anything else that rubs you the wrong way when you see it?
Yes, a lot of people recommend, and I don't, that you make comparisons to other writers. And it's perfectly true that when it comes to selling to publishers, or more especially within publishers, when editors have to talk to sales departments, they make comparisons or what publishers call comps. But when an author says, you know, I'm like Nabokov,
Mm.
it just sounds rude, actually, and sort of presumptuous.
Yeah.
So I don't personally think that's a good idea. Um, so that is a sort of peeve. And then, as you said, that sort of AI inflected nonsense that's creeping in now, which doesn't feel personal
Mm.
and doesn't feel like, anybody's done any proper research.
Actually, speaking of comparing, back in the day, um, I don't know if you know this, but I was an editorial assistant for a really short period of time in Nigeria, and the query inbox was so much fun to read because you would get the wildest comparisons, like people telling you they were the next Shakespeare,
Yeah, exactly.
or saying if you don't publish this, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. Really bold. And I find that the people who were that bold, their work rarely mm, got anywhere close to what they were
In fact,
claiming.
in fact, you're setting yourself up to be a
Yeah.
disappointment. If you say I'm better than Shakespeare, forget it.
Yes. Yeah.
You
So I think when it comes to um and you say if you don't, but I think just being true to self, being honest and saying, like you said, saying why you think that this particular agent would
Exactly.
appreciate this work, and if you've got a humorous tone, you can inject that in. Um, but I think just being true to yourself.
I completely agree.
So, what would you say the best way is for? I think you've answered this a little bit, but I was asked, so I'll repeat the question again. What do you think the best way for an author to find the right fit for their writing style is?
Yeah. So before you write, you need to read, and you read widely and you discover who you like. This is not to make comparisons,
Oh,
but for you to find your sort of fit. And then looking at acknowledgements, which I've mentioned, and seeing agents who are acknowledged in the books you particularly love, perhaps looking at reviews and then checking out who the agents are. It is a little complicated because it's quite easy to see who the publishers are.
mm.
But most good publishers won't consider anything at all unless it comes from an agent.
What would you say the benefit is of having, and I'm going to take a stab at this as myself as well, but what do you think the benefit is of having an agent as opposed to doing it without an agent?
So as I mentioned earlier, most publishers won't even consider work without an agent.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few ways of getting to publishers without an agent. So the first thing is it gives you an expert on your team. Um, then also when it comes to getting a publisher, you also want a decent deal. You know, we negotiate with publishers all the time. I have seen some horrifying contracts that people have signed because they don't really know what they're doing.
Mm.
So, you know, you might manage without an agent, but then the publisher might grab for more money than they should, more territories than they should. Um, I do recommend having an agent if you possibly can.
Yeah,
There
I
are
agree.
competitions now,
Mm.
which you can enter, and they often come with sometimes when they're done with a publisher, they come with a promise of a
Represent.
publishing deal.
Okay.
And obviously that's tempting. Sometimes they're done with agents and it comes with a promise of an agenting deal, and that's tempting too. I think the latter is better than the former, really.
Yeah, I think I agree with you about. I mean, it doesn't so depends on the sort of person the author is, but for the type of person I am, I'm not. My skill is writing. It's not marketing. It's not sort of finding the right sort of deals. I don't know anything about that world, but also if when I first got into this industry, and getting the first sort of offer, I would have just taken it. I would, because you've been working or you've
Yeah.
been dreaming about this thing for some people, it's decades of for their entire life. And then you get the publishing deal. I would have just said yes. I don't even think I would have really looked at
The detail.
the details, whatever they told me they were willing to offer me, I would have taken it and planned on, and it's because I had you in my corner that that's not how that went down, but I would have taken it and I would have been happy with it. I would have been ecstatic. I wouldn't have considered that maybe I could get 10 times more than what what the first person was offering. Especially, I think if it's a big name publisher, you're just like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
Yeah.
HarperCollins wants me. And then that's the end of that. And it's an agent who will know
What's right?
yeah, what's right, what's the
Yeah.
good market rate, what you're worth
Yeah.
really. And maybe sometimes the author might not agree with, and that's a different conversation. But as from my perspective, as someone just entering it absolutely made a difference. Um, okay, what do you think makes a healthy author-agent relationship?
I think honesty is very important. Um, you don't want an agent who promises the moon and then doesn't deliver it. And it isn't as though, I mean, for example, My Sister, the Serial Killer. I knew when I read it that I loved it. It wasn't called that then,
No,
even.
it wasn't.
And but I can't really know if anybody, sometimes people think I'm quite demented with the things I come up with.
Mm,
And indeed, a lot of people didn't love it, but we found the ones who did.
mm,
So, it's that sort of honest relationship from the outset where you don't promise what you can't deliver, where you talk to the author. So your agent shouldn't be the one who makes the decisions. They should inform your decisions. So, you want someone you trust to explain things and probably to recommend things, but not to take away your own control of your own creativity.
yeah, I agree. And I think trust
Yeah.
is big.
Yeah.
Trust is big because from my point of view, you kind of hold my career, to some extent, you hold my career, my ability to go off into the sunset in the palm of your hands. And I need to be able to trust that you are working in my best interests.
Absolutely.
And I need to be able to trust that I'm not at the bottom of your list, at the bottom of your priorities. And I've never felt that way. But I think it's essential. I think if an author doesn't trust their agent, always second guessing everything the agent is doing. That's not healthy. You need to, for both parties, you need to
Yeah,
part ways. I think it's essential that you don't, you know that your agent believes in your abilities and your skills, and that they have your best interest at heart.
absolutely.
Okay, how do you see your relationship with the author after you sold their first book?
Yeah, well, there are all sorts of things. So within the context of the publishing process, there are a lot of things that happen after the deal. All agents are about deals because that's how we make our living. But there are lots and lots of things that then start to happen about the cover design, about when the book's going to be published, about the marketing plan, where the agent ought to be at the author's side again to be a sounding board, to, help them um, navigate all of that. Um, Also, I mean, what was quite fun with My Sister the Serial Killer was having had lots of people not really get it, it then became extremely successful. And just as an aside, the year after publication at the Frankfurt Book Fair, which is a very big deal, there were masses of books that were compared to My Sister the Serial Killer, which a year before, nobody'd heard of. Then there's the other thing, which is holding because what will happen with the first book is either it will be very successful, which yours was, and that's one sort of pressure, or it's very unsuccessful, which most are, which is another sort of pressure. So again, sort of navigating together through either the pressures of following on from a great success or the pressures of the fact that you can never again be a debut. And publishers, all the first thing they do is look at what they call track record. They'll look at the sales of the previous book, and if the sales are modest, they'll just move on.
Mm.
So it's the book itself and standing with the author as you move forward with that first book, but also standing with the author as they navigate what follows.
Yeah, I I agree, and I think also because you know, something else I didn't realize before um entering the industry as an author was foreign rights.
Yeah,
Then there are TV rights, and there's so many other outside of that first rights that are being negotiated, that are being talked about on your behalf, and stage rights, which again I wouldn't have known how to negotiate, how to get the work out there. So it is ongoing and it is lifelong. If I think again, if the relationship is a positive one, then it's a lifelong. How
I
long
think that.
when Pat Barker been
Well,
agent?
Pat's a very interesting example in my life because when I was a publisher, I was her editor, and I actually edited the book that won the Booker, The Ghost Road.
Mhm.
And then I later became her agent. So she's been in my life probably for 40 years, first as her publisher and then as her agent.
Mm.
Um, but in a way, an aside, it's harder for publishers to stick with authors for a lifetime. Um, Editors move, books fail, and they can't carry on. The agent, all being well, should be alongside you for a whole career.
Okay, what would your advice be to a writer who has received multiple rejections?
J.K. Rowling received, I don't know how many, perhaps 30.
So your tip
Uh,
is you're on your way to being a billionaire, basically. Like
yeah,
that.
you're on your
The
way to being a
yeah.
billionaire. No, well, it depends. I mean, most rejections aren't really editorial advice. Some may say a little bit that could be
Mm.
useful to you. In which case, think about, if they say that they can't follow the story or they didn't like the characters or whatever, that's worth thinking about. But mostly try and stay positive. Um, if you can't help being a writer, then a writer is what you are. So you just have to carry on and maybe write a different book. So an example I would use is I represent Mark Haddon, and Mark had been very successful as a children's book author, and then his then agent said, when he wanted to write an adult book, why would you write an adult book? You make a perfectly good living as a children's writer. He didn't want to go on being a children's writer. So he came to me as his agent. It was not magic. We could not sell the first book he wrote to anybody, and that's still in a drawer. But then he wrote The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, which was an international bestseller and a play and goodness
Mm,
knows what. So he put it in a drawer, but he wrote something else. He
mm,
didn't just, he had to survive his agent saying you can only write children's books. He had to survive his first adult book being rejected. And then he wrote a hugely successful book. That's not going to happen to everybody, but it does happen.
yeah. Um, when it comes to querying an agent, this is going back a bit, but when it comes to querying an agent, should you query one at a time or several at once?
I'd say query more than one at a time, because otherwise you'll go crazy waiting. But don't query 10 because you can't manage it. So I think, 3 or 4, perfectly sensible to do, if you've done a bit of research. But perhaps one at a time is foolish because,
No.
it might make you very depressed if you're waiting
Is it
forever
in,
and they don't get back. But do
um,
also another thing, sorry,
no,
but
no, it's
just to
fine.
say, when you look at the websites, you'll see there will be submission guidelines. Do follow those
Mm,
guidelines. I'm getting annoyed at the moment. You asked me earlier what annoys me, and something else is annoying me at the moment, which is that because it's possible very easily to find my email address, although our website says very clearly that there's a portal for submissions,
mm,
a lot of people are writing to me directly, and I don't want, I receive hundreds of emails a day. I don't want that.
mm, mm.
So follow the guidelines.
Yeah, I think sometimes when people don't get a response, they automatically think it's about the quality of their work. But if you've already, from the job, if you've already started doing things you shouldn't do, they've asked for 3 chapters, you sent 50, or,
Exactly.
all of those things mean you might not even get eyes on it.
That's
Um,
right.
so absolutely pay attention to what you're being asked to do. Also, is it in bad taste to query more than one agent from, so say, um, Emma and yourself in Aiken, Alexander?
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
Mhm.
We do, I mean, I particularly because, I've got such a big client list and I'm a certain age, I hand things on to colleagues. Um, but also we then find out, you know, and then, I mean, I just had something the other day that it turned out had already been turned down by Emma. That isn't
Mm,
really a good look.
mm,
So only one person within an agency, but if you're actually sending it to the submissions portal, you might say, I think this is one for Claire, or it's one for Emma, or it's one for Harriet, or whatever.
mm, mm,
But Pippa, who handles our submissions, will take a view about whether it's for the agency and if it is, who the right agent is. And that's why that's important, to actually submit
So
through
do
that
you all
portal.
tell Pippa this is what we're looking for, so she knows what each agent in the
Yeah, she would know.
okay.
Yeah.
When you first signed me on, and then you started to send my work out, what I realized, because before that I just um thought, I guess I just imagined you would send it to the publishing submissions inbox, but you send the work to particular editors. So I just want to talk about it a little bit about how how you pick the editor you're sending it to and the publishing house and so on.
So part of it, I mean, I always make the joke that I'm the last lunching agent. But I do a lot of lunch. which is, but most people don't do that anymore. But I talk to editors all the time. And it's a bit like dating. I mean, you're not always right about
Mm,
what they're going to like, but you know, your agent will know more about, you know, who likes what sort of thing. And that's part of our role. And I certainly am across, I would say, pretty well all the UK and US and Canadian actually editors. Because that's part of my job. So putting and it would be part of any agent's job.
mm,
So putting your book before the right sort of editor is essential. Um, to just explain, to unpack that a bit. If I talk about Penguin Random House, which is the biggest group in the UK, there are, I can't remember, 6 or 7 divisions. Within that, there are 4 or 5 different imprints. Within
mm,
those imprints, there will be 4 or 5 different editors. So, you know, again, this is why you really having an agent is very useful, because they will know what that editor likes, what that
mm,
imprint is good at.
mm.
And that is very, very important.
How do you, so you've gotten the manuscript to the editor is interested, and then they send you what their offer is. How do you know? I mean, it's just, how do you know, okay, this is a fair offer for this work, or they're taking the mickey?
Don't know how to answer that. I mean, sometimes it's competitive. Sometimes. So I sold a first novel. Let's use this as a case study. I sold a first novel 2 weeks ago. And it's a very odd novel. I like odd. And it is not what we call propulsive. It isn't a story that makes you turn the pages. It's got 4 different characters and you
Mm,
move between them. So not everybody liked it at all. Again, but there were people who liked it, but there was someone who loved it,
mm.
and she made an opening offer, and she even came in person to the office to tell me how much she loved it. But it still everything felt right except the money. How do I
Mm,
know? I don't know. I just thought it was too low.
mm,
So then she was about to go on holiday. She increased the offer before she went away in order to do what they call take it off the table, i.e., not wait for anybody else. But it still
mm,
didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like enough money. Um, while she was away, her boss increased the offer again, and then it felt fair.
mm,
Um, and so we accepted the offer. But it's not, but it isn't like there's an obvious price. I
mm,
think it's instinct. Um, and negotiating, as I said earlier, is part of what your agent does. Um, so it's the art of the possible as well. You know, having said which, I don't always encourage an author to go for the top offer. Many agents will, but I don't, because I think I mentioned earlier, but I think it's important to think about a career and not just a book.
mm,
And what can happen with the first novel, if it is popular amongst publishers, is that it goes for a very great deal of money and then it doesn't work. And then nobody wants to hear about the next
mm.
book.
Thank you so much for your time, Claire. It
Pleasure.
has been super. I think people will, I mean, I feel like I've learned a lot, to be honest. So I think a lot of people will answer a lot of questions that people have about what it's like. I also want to use this opportunity to say that every ecosystem, each country's ecosystem is a little bit different as far as,
Sure.
so some just don't have agents.
Yeah.
It is direct to publisher. So this is very specific to the UK, the US, because the industry is massive. So you will be able to say, if you're watching this from Nigeria, you can go direct to
To
publisher,
publishers.
but you can also get, and also the other thing about agents, now that I think of it, and Claire, please say if I'm wrong, but I think one of the interesting thing about agents is that you don't have to be located where the agent is located. You don't have to be based where the agent is based. I don't think it made a difference as far as you signing me on.
Not
that I
at all.
was a British
I've always,
citizen
no, I
on.
have, for whatever reason, I have several authors in Nigeria, I have several in Pakistan, I have several in the Caribbean, some in America, some in Canada. I
Mm,
mean, I think the only difference is the annoyance of time differences if you want if you want to talk on the phone.
yeah.
Um, no,
Yeah.
doesn't
So
make a
you can
difference.
be anywhere and get an agent who's also anywhere. So don't let if you are interested in getting an agent, don't worry about where you are located. Thank you so much, Claire, for your time.
Great pleasure. I've enjoyed it.
Okay.
Hope it's useful.
I think it will be. And thank you everybody for listening. Catch you in the next video.